Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the new Sandling Junction Build and episode 23. Now, as promised, episode 23 is going to be about version 2 of the engine shed build. But before I get into that part of the video, I just wanted to address episode 22 and that call out for help and advice that I put out about the track work behind me going wrong. Well, not necessarily wrong, but it caused a problem and I couldn't figure a way through the problem. So you guys were asked to come up with your ideas and you didn't let me down at all. Just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody who contributed a thought, an idea and a possible way through the situation. And in particular, I'm going to call out Neil Harbour and Peachy Models. Now both you guys came up with an idea of using a Y point. I've got 2 Y points in the collection over there. I had no thoughts to use them. I didn't even see the potential of using them in my predicament, but hey, I followed certainly Neil's idea of bringing a point closer to the turntable, allowing for the traffic on and off both the turntable and also onto the branch main line. So it did away with one road all the way through, which is fantastic. I can use the 3-way the other side of the large Northlight engine shed, and I gain all that I wanted to, and I am way away from that engine shed. So as other people put in their comments that I was putting too much track work down, and I get that there has been a lot of track work going in on this setup, limiting maybe some of the potential scenic work, but I'm trying to balance that. As I said to someone, I'm trying to balance that with playability. You know, I want some shunting. I would like to have the ability to put locomotives up to refuel, certainly the diesels. Lots of little bits and pieces. So when you're stuck for room, you do need to think about playability and also the look, I suppose, and functionality of the whole layout. So that's what I was playing around with the ideas of. And so yes, I just feel that you guys have come to my rescue, and you know, thanks for those who put all the comments in. There's been some great suggestions that I can think about in the future relating to surface mounted point motors and all this other stuff going on, but with a simple point relocation and a different point, the whole thing has been addressed. What I'm going to do is swing the camera around, just show you what I mean, show you what I've now set up, and I think the solution is sweet, and thank you guys. And once I've done that, I'm going to get back to version 2 of the engine shed build. So if you don't want to watch that, you can stop very shortly. If you do want to watch that, then watch to the end and see how I get on with version 2 of my laser cut engine shed. Catch you all very shortly. I'm back. Okay, so just a quick look see at what I've actually done based on what you guys have suggested. Now this was the initial runoff on, and we changed that according to some of the comments from a previous video, and that works well now. So this was the new line that was coming up, and if you remember, we got to here, sorry about that light again, but to here, and we had the double slip. Now it worked, only the fact that I could not put any point motors underneath, and I've got to say, even with my working out before, it was still about an inch, 3/4 of an inch or an inch away from the engine shed corner. But when I tried to relocate everything, it got to within ½ inch of that. Locos would go by, but it did look a bit silly. I did see in one comment there I could put some yellow and black stripes on the corner of the building, but yeah, it still would look a little bit silly. So I wasn't happy with that anyway. But I couldn't see a way through until, as I said, the 2 gentlemen I've already mentioned came up with the Y point idea. Now, it does several things. There's the Y point in question. It can be put down here a little further, but I think somewhere here is more than acceptable. and it gives a nice shallow curve off to the turntable, and it's a straight feed onto that track. Now luckily the geometry is perfect and I haven't got to do anything at all. I could still lift off this a little bit, bring it in closer to curve around on this track. I might do that just for an aesthetic, but there's no real need to if I didn't want to. But what I am happy is that from the corner to there we have got 2.5, nearly 3 inches of room, and more than accessible to put a roadway from the back end of the building up to here, some car parking or something like that along the engine shed. All sorts of bits of extra infrastructure that were not going to be possible before. So I really am chuffed at that, and I've got to thank you guys again. Allows one track instead of 2 to come up through here, and if I use that 3-way here, then I've got 2 tracks here that I can use as good sidings. I have got 1 extra road up here which will lead off to a refueling line. I could even have a somewhat redundant line, not redundant, but you know, a side line, a relief line maybe for another diesel that is I don't know, could even put a wash system up there for diesels. I have no idea, but there is just that extra point in here, and then a little shorter run into the station pilot shed, which I've moved from here to here. I think that is much nicer, it's much better to look at, and I've got room around the back end, all the way down through here. There's a vast area here which is not going to have anything other than scenery in, and I've got room around the Northlight engine shed without worrying about having to move it or anything at all. I've got to say it's a win-win. Thank you very, very much for all your thoughts and your help. What a wonderful community the model railway fraternity really is. You know, everyone out there has got no access to grind. Well, most people haven't. You do get the people, well, I don't know, they've got a name that people give them for making awful comments or snidey comments, but generally 99.999% of everybody out there is a nice character, a nice person, and everybody is willing to help another. So I really appreciate the hobby from that point of view, and certainly from the point of view of YouTube, and it's just a great way of getting a little bit of help when needed. And we don't each of us possess all the knowledge that we need to complete our layouts. We do have to ask for help now and again, and you know me, I ask for help whenever I need it, and you guys always seem to come to the rescue. Anyway, enough of all that. I've brought you up to speed with that, and thank you very much for those again who put their comments down and took the time to do that. And that is the way that this track is now going to go. I can push forward, get this all laid, get this all finished off. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to say thanks again to everybody who helped, and I'm going to stop rabbiting on and get on with version 2 of the engine shed, which is the real thrust and point of this particular video, episode 23. So catch you all at the other end. See you soon. Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the new Sandling Junction build. Now, I'm not quite sure where this particular video is going to fit into the scheme of things, because I have just put out the engine shed version 1, which I shared with you, all the warts, faults and everything that were contained within it. But I was so excited about that initial build, the fact that I'd created this from scratch, learned 2 new programs pretty much, and also using that lovely Creality Falcon A1 laser. I know that there was a lot of faults with the last one, a lot of problems that I didn't see, didn't know about correcting, hadn't realized that I needed to do certain things. Now, I want to say at this point a big thank you to everybody who gave me comments and thoughts and process tips all about using the different ways of building up a shed or building of any sort. And in particular, I wanted to thank Steve Smith. Now, Steve is, I got this right, and I'm sorry, Steve, I've got this wrong, laser lines. I've always looked to the fact that I know you're a professional guy doing this for a living, and it was jolly kind of you to take the time out and share some of your great knowledge about the art of creating buildings in laser engraved format, and that really helped, and thank you so much for that. And I've taken on board all that you've said, and I'm sure I'm still going to get things wrong, but thank you very much for that. Anyway, that was jolly kind of you to take the trouble. So I think we're getting much closer to what would be an engine shed, and some of the problems that I had have been ironed out. I probably dare say there are still a few, but we're a lot closer than we were. So I'm going to show you now what we've got. I'm going to try and put as much of it together as I can, and there are certain parts that I don't want to put in right now, because like the window frames, I want to paint those before I put them in. Going to be a lot harder to do that otherwise. I've also been playing around with a few ideas about brick effects and how to create the mortar lines and doing that, and that's a whole new probably a whole new video on its own. I don't know, we'll see how far we get in this one, but anyway, enough of me rambling on. Thanks for your support, thanks for the help and the suggestions, and Steve and everybody else, if you've got anything else to impart with me, great, thank you so much. It will be always appreciated. Thank you so much. Anyway, enough of all that. Let's get on with this and see where we're at. See where we are with it. Okay, everybody, there we go. One big pile of bits and pieces sitting on my desk. Now, I have been burning, as I say, for a week or so now, and this is what I have ended up with. This whole mess of debris in front of me. But what I did decide to do was to make enough parts to do 2 engine sheds. A little bit overkill, but I know how ham-fisted I can be sometimes and get things wrong. But I'm just going to run through things now very quickly and sort of tell you what's gone on and why things are as they are. Well, first and foremost, we've got the outer front and back of the shed. I had a redesign of the windows because I realized that I needed to put a soldier course in. If I can hold that up, I needed that soldier course across the top of the windows, and with the huge arch that I created in the first iteration, it really wasn't going to work. They were just splayed out like crazy. So I had to change the curvature to the top so that the arch soldiers would work and look a little bit better. I think they've come out very nicely. I really am pleased. I also wanted to put in a lintel, and so I put in an extra drop to the window frames so that I could put some 3mm lintels in. These will be sitting in here, and so you'll get 1mm approximately lapping over the side of the edge of the wall. So hopefully I've got that right. Time will tell, because this could still go horribly wrong, I gotta say. So that's the lintels, that's the windows. You can see how I've redesigned the windows with that little archway, and also enough at the base so that the frame will still show above the lintel. Let me just show you what I mean. So if I put in a window here behind, just about hold that in place. So there's the window, if you can see that, and the lintel should allow a little bit of frame to show. It may be that I reburn the windows and give a little thicker. I'm not too sure how that's going to work yet, but we shall see. It's all in the process of design. Now the internal sections are as they are. They are little changed. The area here, now I had up and down bars, and I was told that maybe this was the better configuration, so I did them and redesigned those. And on top of that, I then had to redesign the first one. Now there's no real need to put the first one in other than an aesthetic and maybe a little bit of rigidity, but when I put that in, it does clear the arch of the engine shed, the entrance. But as you can see, as it was before, I forgot to remove that bar, and so that goes straight the way through the vent section, so those were no good. So I went back and redesigned it again, and now we have a roof truss at the front. It will stay in that position right on the front there, but it does not impede that little section of the vent. So that was sorted out. Really happy with the way that went. So nothing else too much has changed. However, the roof. Now remember the first one, I had holes here with a sort of secondary bar here. Well, I made it one piece, and it made sense to me to do it as one piece. And then I used some very, very thin 0.3mm laser board card paper basically to inscribe roof sections, the slates. And I thought to myself, why am I doing all of this? It really wasn't working out too well, and it ended up being a real problem. So that was the second version, and hence 2.5. I then designed roof slates that I could then engrave onto the face of this roof, and so that's how they will appear. And there's some slight variation in the line and mark to give the appearance of a little bit of misuniformity as such. So that is the second version. So these will not be used in the next part of the build. So that is the roof. Similarly, when it comes to the little cowlings on top, if you remember, I had the devil of a job trying to put these together. This time I've tabbed and slotted each of them, and I've given them a brick texture, and so they will come into being like so. If I get this right, they will sit there like that, joined together, and you have brick texture all the way through and on the outside of the end of the cowling light. So they were redesigned. That's all looking good. I also had to redesign the corners because this is 3mm laser board or laser card, laser paper, and I had none of these set up properly for the tabs, but now I use the tabs and slots that I had, and I do have the correct spacing for all of this. That's upside down, but let's put that the right way around. There we go. And we have the correct spacing. So these will hide the tabs and slots on the end of each corner of the building. So that was that done. And I found a pretty neat way of doing it because these are very, very fragile. And I found that if you take one of these types of rule, you know, these sort of safety finger ones, they're only cheap as chips off of eBay. But if you just put this on this hard edge, and if you've got, what I've done here is I've got engraved, you can't quite see it on camera, but I've engraved the stonework a little bit just across. If I bend it, you can see how that starts to crease. But I've also engraved a little line down the center. So all I've got to do is quite simply put in a crease on the edge of this rule, like so. And I have a perfect, he says, hopefully, a perfect joint all the way down the edge there of that. I don't know if you can see that, whether that's focusing properly, but there we are. We have the brick or block work that will sit on the edge of each corner of the building. Similarly, I've done the same as I've done on the roof. These are the tiny roof sections that will sit on the top of each of the cowlings, and they present a little bit of a gap there, as you can see, but that's fine because what I've got also, I've taken the trouble and I will just bend one into shape and show you. I don't think I've already got one. Nope. Let's just put one. I've done the same thing. I engraved some little bits and pieces on the top of the roof, as they will be the what do you call it, the bonnets, or not the bonnets but cappings for the roof. So I've done the same thing here. Okay, and quite simply, once they're in and in place, then you've got the cappings on your roof as well, so that will sit nicely. And that's all done in 0.3 of a millimeter laser board. Very, very fragile paper type product, but it works. And very similarly, when I've got the roof done, I've done the same thing again on the main roof. I've got the roof capping as well, just to sit on the edges of these, whichever way I do it. I think it's going to be that way. I'm not too sure which way I design that. Doesn't matter, I can make a decision. But again, we've got the tops of the roofs to go in there, and they will work quite nicely. All right, so I think I'm well on my way to getting this sorted out. I'm not out of the woods yet, but I think I'm well on the way. So I do know that Steve was very kind and made a big suggestion about brick alignment on windows. Now, I haven't looked closely at these, and I'm probably very wrong in the way they finish, and I'm sure those who look with a very, very fine microscope will see the fact that there is not the alignment that you would expect to see at the edge of a brick. And he told me the way to do that. And so when it comes to maybe redesigning this shed for a final go, a real final bells and whistles, I's and T's look at it, then I will make some subtle adjustments to make sure that my bricks all finish and start with the correct full or half brick measure on the windows and everywhere else. At the moment, it's a little bit hit and miss, gotta say, and so it could well be wrong. But hey, I'm still really stoked with all of this. So all the inner. So that's it. That's the guts of it. Let's get on. Let's see how it all turns out. Wish me luck, because it could go horribly wrong. We hope not. A lot of care, a lot of attention, a lot of work. I've got to say, I never realised how much work is involved in doing something like this. It has, I've got to say, I take my hat off to those who design these for a living, such as Steve and other people, because the amount of work and dedication that goes into creating something that we just accept as a kit. You know, we don't appreciate half the time all that's gone into it. And there's an awful lot, I'm telling you. It'd be even easier if I can get the lid off. There we go. Yeah, you just don't appreciate all the work that goes in. So hats off, guys. You do a stunning job. All right, let's get some of that glue out. All right, so where do we go? Oh, I know what I've got here as well. Actually, I don't have two. I do have two versions of this shed. And there was another reason for that, and I must go into that because it is quite important. You'll see that this set on the inside is tabbed, and these are tabbed. Now the other set have no tabs, and that was important because I found that when I did the first one, that there was a little bit of mismeasuring going on my part, and I felt that it became quite difficult to get the inside and outside to really work together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the inside of the tabbed one, and we're just going to get that set up. I'm not very good when it comes to keeping lovely, crispy, dirt-free, glue-free edges when it comes to, I'm a bit ham-fisted, but hopefully this will do okay. So the first of the walls to go together are the inner walls of one of the two engine sheds. Now this one has the tabs and slots applied to it, and as I later find out, it's not for me the best way to go, and I then use the roof trusses to create the square. I also used these squares on the cutting mat to make sure it was square. Okay, I'm going to assume that is square. So I'm going to carefully put that to one side. And what I'm going to do now is work on the two sets of outer buildings. So there's a little bit more gluing to be done. So the next set of sides that I'm going to put together are the outer walls of the second engine shed. These have the tabs and slots, as do the other outer walls. But this one needed to go together first so that I could put the flush walls to the inside as and when I felt that they were needed. I tested them here only to find out that actually the two sets of windows really did not marry up. But hey ho, it's the way we go, we're going to learn. Now I'm putting the outer walls with tabs onto the first engine shed. Almost. Now I'm going to see if these tabs line up, and if they don't, then I know I've still got some more problems with the design that I've got to deal with. That's not so bad. That is not so bad. Okay. That's not so good. I've got to get that roof lined out. Alright. Are we still square? Now we are. Alright. I'm going to carry on this process. I think there's a little bit of a issue here, a little bit of misalignment there, and it's not going to be a bed of roses, I know. So let's just crack on. Okay, so I haven't discovered that the fact that the windows really don't line up, and the tabs and slots were a little bit difficult to line up from the inner to the outer wall. I'm continuing on to put this outer wall together and doing the very best job I can, but it will need a real redesign in version 3, I'm sure of that. That back is off just a little bit, gotta say. So I may need to, well, almost certainly we'll have to look at that. Could there be a slight variance to the window frame on there? See if that will pull into place a bit more. Probably not. Not without throwing the roof apex out. So there is a misalignment on the windows, which I do need to go back in and address. There is already a couple of little problems associated with this, as I've said, but I am genuinely quite pleased. Now what I've got to do is change these. The width of each is correct, like that. So is that end, or so is that and that end. So one of them's got to lose a bit of ground just to fit in. If I put this together with the windows in, you're going to see it if you look hard enough. Of course you are. I'm not going to try and pull all over your eyes, but at the same time, it's not going to be such a big problem that I can't get it right in the next version. Hi guys, and a very warm welcome back. Now I'm not quite sure where this piece of footage actually will fit in the scheme of things. It could form part of version 2, or it could be the start of version 3. I'm not too sure, and it really doesn't matter. I'm really charting the course and the development of this engine shed. Version 3, when it actually happens in the redesign, will based on that method. However, there were a good number of other things wrong with this. If you can remember that the wall from the apex there did not match up with the apex on the inside wall. Not so bad, but it really didn't match up. And I pulled the roofs apart here because I wanted a little lap on there. So I need to extend these. And there are some fundamental areas here that are wrong. So it does need re-looking at, and a little bit more. One of the biggest problems that I had was the fact that the inner wall and the outer wall had major misalignments on the window frame. If you see here, the windows go in, not a problem at all, but they do not line up properly with the outer wall, and that is on all of them. Now I did cut off a little bit of the inner wall, so on this one, so that it didn't look as bad. So there was a potential of using this engine shed in the future, but I know it's not right. So I have got to go back to the drawing board with these, and well, one of them, doesn't matter which one, but I have got to go back to the drawing board and redesign stuff. This little area here worked out very, very well. The corbelling down the side worked out very well. It's not easy to apply as it's still unstuck there. There is a lot of memory in this 3.3mm laser board. There is a lot of memory in it. I've also got to extend the roof from here to here, and maybe just extend the little bit of ridge tile that I've got to maybe meet down on this first line of slates along the top of each side. So if I just extend that so that it starts here, ends there on the top of the line, I think we'll be fine on that too. So that's where we are with that. Okay, the biggest failure for me was the redesign of the cowlings that go on top. I had 2 lots of slots and tabs for each. The first ones were not slotted at all, and they were a devil to put together. The second lot had a double slot and tab, very small, very fiddly, and I misaligned them a little bit, and they just would not go. So I redesigned them this morning, and I have sort of test fitted this one, and it works fine, or at least it purports to work fine. I could still use a little bit of stonework cornering just to hide the joint on the burn of the wood, but essentially we're good to go. So now we have all our cowlings, or at least all the components for. I've still got to get to the point where I start liking some of this rocket glue stuff. At the moment I really don't. It's not been my friend as it's such. Right, let's just get something we can apply glue with. And let's just start making some. Oh, not that bit. Get rid of that. Alright. Okay, so I'm not going to pretend at all that this part of it was easy. It really wasn't. Very, very fiddly, trying to keep the glue off from everything. And I do wish that I could get on with some of these other glues, the deluxe products that are out there. I don't seem to have any luck with them. But I did manage to get these all put together. The new tab and slot arrangement that I've made worked extremely well. And as you see, I did make far too many of them. That was in case I got a little bit too hand-fisted later on, but as it turned out, I really only needed 4 for the 2 engine sheds, along with my lovely Sandling cup of mug there, cup of tea, and I'm ready to carry on. I'm really quite chuffed with the outcome of these roof lights anyway. And if anything, I've got to say that there is just a little, and I'm being very picky, but there's just a little angle difference where the cowl is on the roof top, but it could be the fact that the under roof or the main roof structure needs to be redesigned slightly, which we know we're going to do. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Next time you see these, they will have a little bit of capping on the very top, which I now will show you what I normally do. What I did before is take one of those types of rule, and I'm going to bend that down through the center on there. I may get lucky enough to be able to put these on. Keep the comments coming, keep the ideas coming, the tips about this, and everything you sort of say I look at, I read, and I thank you very much in advance for all of that. It really does help me out. And if you are enjoying what I'm doing on Sandling, then if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to do that, but it really does help me out and help the channel grow. And I thank you all in advance for doing that. So yeah, catch you all very, very shortly, and we'll see where the next part of this takes us in this build. Catch you soon.